Friends, Not Masters. A Political Autobiography. Mohammad Ayub Khan, President of Pakistan. Published in 1967. This is a Plisken audiobook presentation dedicated to those who have worked for the building of Pakistan as a progressive and modern state, and to those who have defended it with such distinction. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Surely Allah changes not the condition of a people until they change their own condition. Preface. This is essentially a spoken book. After I had defined the broad scope and outlines of the book, I asked some friends to prepare questions on the theme of different chapters. The question and answer sessions began in June 1964 and continued till the end of the year. The tape recordings of these sessions came to nearly 30 hours, and the transcript covered more than 900 pages. I got the transcript sometime in 1965. Since then I have been going over it and revising it from time to time. It is not customary for a man in office to write his life story. Apart from the limitations imposed by the consciousness of responsibility, there is always the danger that any suggestion of success would be interpreted as an attempt at image building. Let me say, therefore, that the credit for whatever may have been achieved in terms of political stability or economic development should go to those who were associated with me in the implementation of various reforms. I may have presented new ideas out, these were refined and put into execution by my colleagues in government, and by able and dedicated men in the services. Above all, the willing support and cooperation of the people of Pakistan helped to lift the nation from the social and political morass of the 50s to its present level of prosperity and growth. The narrative covers events up to the presidential elections in 1965, though there are references to later events, particularly in the chapter relating to foreign affairs. While revising the manuscript, I made use of my notes and other documents, but situations and conversations have been largely reconstructed from memory. There may be some errors in my recollection of chronological and other details, but these should not affect the line of argument. I undertook this exercise without quite realizing how long and arduous it was going to be. I also did not know that the people I had chosen for preparing and asking the questions would prove so persistent. Still, it has been a refreshing and rewarding job. I have tried as dispassionately as possible to re-evaluate the past and interpret significant developments which have influenced the history of Pakistan. Till's history is still in the making, but I think it has taken a positive direction, and a stage has been reached from where one can look back and see an integrated picture. I hope this account explains the process through which I evolved some of my ideas, and will help towards a better understanding of what I have attempted to do since becoming the President of Pakistan. I have tried to keep the narrative candid and objective, concentrating on problems and events rather than on personalities. Here and there I have had to give my impressions and assessment of certain people who were at the helm of affairs before the revolution. Whatever I have said is intended to substantiate my interpretation of political situations and not to hurt the feelings of any individual, and I hope it will be read in that spirit. It is a story of struggle to get new ideas accepted. Whoever presumes to act as a pioneer in the field of ideas must be prepared to face criticism and resistance. I have had a good deal of both, but my conviction of the need and validity of the changes which I have tried to bring about in the social and political life of the country remains as fervent and unfaltering as ever. We gained freedom after a long period of domination which left in its wake a legacy of old attitudes and habits. The problem was to change these attitudes and habits and to bring about a more direct and intimate awareness of contemporary realities. I venture to think we have made progress in many fields. I have not hesitated to admit failures. Progress is a long and tortuous process, full of trials and errors. I have viewed problems as a Pakistani, a Muslim, and an Asian. Pakistan is my passion, my life. A look of happiness on the faces of people thrills and sustains me, just as a shade of anxiety in their eyes causes me anguish. I have woken up from sleep to check whether the sound on the window panes is of the long-awaited rain. I feel parched inside when I see a drought-stricken field. The soil of Pakistan fascinates me, for it is my soil. I belong to it. Every moment of my life I have dedicated to the service of my people, never for a moment yielding to any pressure or disappointment. Pakistan has to establish a distinct national identity of her own, in moral, social, intellectual and political terms, and all my endeavors have been devoted to TIL's objective. While we may learn from the experience of others, we have to work out our own solutions, and our own salvation. I have always pursued the possible in a pragmatic and moderate manner, conscious of the limitations inherent in our situation, and I have never introduced emotion in the presentation of problems to my people. We have a weakness for the dramatic, and the sensational, which I try to avoid. Too often we mistake the emotional for the ideal. For us the ideal should be to develop a rational approach to life. We cannot allow our vision to be clouded by memories of past glory. It is the present with all its complexities, on which we must concentrate, and it is the future with all its promise for which we must work. Our present destiny is to move from crisis to crisis. For us there can be no rest or relaxation. Internally, the major problem for us has been to establish political institutions and stable instruments of government. These institutions and instruments had to be fashioned according to our own thinking, temperament and needs. The process has not been easy. In the earlier years the whole approach was on a personal basis, and problems were rarely seen in the broad national perspective. This inevitably retarded progress. The political system which we inherited had no relevance to our conditions. The result was that the system was misused and exploited to serve limited interests. It needed a revolution to replace the system by one which reflected the traditions of the people, and responded to their aspirations. I cannot claim that the new system has found universal acceptance, but it has taken roots and people are beginning to recognize its advantages. We have yet to develop a strong sense of nationalism, which means rising above the personal and the parochial, and evolving a mature mode of dealing with the problems of the country. As a Muslim, my sole anxiety has been to unite the people of Pakistan, in the light of their faith and ideology. This ideology I understand in terms of certain immutable principles: the unity of God, equality and brotherhood of man, progress to higher levels of existence, and adherence to the fundamentals of Islam. Our society is torn by a number of schisms. The most fundamental is the one which separates the educated classes from the traditional groups. It is vital that understanding and communication between these two sections should be restored. This can come about through a proper interpretation of Islamic principles, and their application to the present-day problems. Unless this happens, the gulf will grow which may eventually isolate the traditional groups from the modern educated classes, and alienate the latter from Islam. In dealing with world affairs, I have viewed problems as an Asian. It is within the Asian community that we have to establish for ourselves a permanent place of respect and strength. This is what our national interests demand. And this is why we continue to work for peace and stability in this part of the world. We have been able to establish normal relations with our neighbors, with the unfortunate exception of India, while maintaining our traditional contacts with Western powers, particularly with the United States of America. In this matter our thinking has been guided as much by our own interests, as by the limitations of our political and economic resources. We are dedicated to peace, because peace alone will give us the time which we need for our development. Our endeavor is to remain out of the orbit of major power conflicts. This we can achieve only through honest and straightforward dealings with others. A number of fateful events have taken place since 1965. I have not dealt with them in this volume because some of the events are too much a part of the present to permit a dispassionate interpretation at this time. I hope I shall be able to deal with them on some future occasion. I am grateful for the assistance which I have received in the preparation of this book from various people. I must also acknowledge the kindness of the government of Pakistan, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Cabinet Division, in permitting me to make use of official documents, in order to complete some of the details. Field Marshal Mohammad Ayub Khan, Rawalpindi. February 28, 1967. Chapter 1. Youth. People have often asked me to write about my life. How does one do that while in the thick of it? Then there is an element of demonstration in writing for public consumption, which is alien to my nature. All my life, whatever I have done in response to the call of duty, I have done silently and quietly, not even keeping a regular diary of my experiences. I have been associated closely with the government since 1951, when I became Commander-in-Chief of the Pakistan Army, and I have been responsible for running the government since the revolution in October IgG8. Many things have happened during this period, both good and bad, and it might be useful to restate them. The problem has been to find time to reevaluate the past. This was resolved by a period of forced leisure, when I was convalescing in Murray after an operation in June 1964. Life for me has always been busy, crowded with events. One of the few spells of inactivity that I can remember is an hour that I spent sitting, all by myself, one evening in the compound of a rest house in Cox's Bazar. I sat still, absorbing the silence around me. In the distance the sea waves noiselessly rolled over the soft shores of the Bay of Bengal, and for a moment the tumult of life subsided. Apart from a few such brief experiences, life has been a relentless pressure of duty. I was born in the village of Rahana on May 14, 1907. It was the day before some popular festival, and the whole family was preparing to celebrate it. My father had had 4 children by his first wife, who died, and I was the first child by his second wife. Rahana is a picturesque little village about 50 miles north of Rawalpindi in West Pakistan. It is surrounded by an undulating range of low hills, with the pine-covered slopes of the Himalayas in the distance. My forefathers settled in this area after emigrating from Afghanistan. One of my earliest memories is of a bird which used to call at daybreak. It was the signal to go to school, which meant getting pulled out of bed, a hurried wash, and a 4-mile ride on the back of a mule. Even now, whenever I hear this bird, I get restless. My mother was a simple woman who spent all her life in the village. She continued to live in our modest ancestral home till her death, doing whatever she could do to help the village folk. She was a strong-willed person and remained mentally alert till the last. I remember the birth of my youngest brother. I was then about 2.5 years old. I saw this child lying by the side of my mother. I seized a stick and wanted to beat him. I was taken away. It was a great torture seeing another child sleeping by the side of my mother, and it took me a long time to get over that feeling. I remember it vividly to this day. While I was deeply attached to my mother, it was my father who had the greatest influence of all on my character, outlook, and attitude towards life. He was a Rizaldar major in Hodson's Horse. Physically he was a powerful man. His presence in the village would inspire awe and respect. But I remember him as a friend, extremely gentle, pious and affectionate. He had a sensitive and understanding mind, and I always found great mental satisfaction in his company. He had a vague but strong sense of Muslim nationalism. I remember on one occasion in 1919 or 1920, an alim religious scholar from Mansehra came to him and said, "India is Darul Harb. The rulers of this part of the world are Kafirs, non-believers. We should therefore migrate from here." My father said, "Malvi Sahib, my only desire is to die under the flag of Islam, but where is that flag? There is no Muslim country today which is free. They are all dominated by colonial powers." My father was a deeply religious man. He never missed his prayers, and would say his tahajjud regularly. I remember once waking up in the middle of the night. I could feel his tall figure standing by my bed, his head bowed in prayer. I knew he was praying for me, but I did not stir in my bed lest I should disturb him. It was from my father that I learnt most of my family history. We belonged to the Tarin tribe, which ruled over parts of Hazara and Campbellpur districts, and was involved in a long and bitter struggle against the Sikhs and the British. The people of this tribe came from Pishin, now in Baluchistan, which was originally a part of the Afghan Empire. I would be fascinated to know more about the life story of one of our ancestors, Sardar Mohammad Khan Tarin. He was a man of indomitable courage, and had great strength of character. He was the eldest son of Sardar Najibullah Khan Tarin, and became ruler of the state and settled in Golteri. The local tribes, Gujars, Dalazaks, Joduns, and Utmanzais, gave him a lot of trouble, but he established his control over them by crushing their revolts. In the early decades of the 19th century, he faced a number of Sikh invasions. In 1822, Hari Singh Nalva, the Sikh governor of Kashmir, entered Hazara to defeat the Tarin Sardar, but failed in his attempt. This failure infuriated Maharaja Ranjit Singh, who himself invaded Hazara with a large force. Sardar Muhammad Khan was captured and taken to Lahore. Hari Singh purchased him for 50,000 rupees, and brought him to Rewat in Rawalpindi district. Hari Singh wanted him to accept the Sikh rule in his area. This was not acceptable to Sardar Muhammad Khan, so he was thrown into a dried-up well. He was fed on salted bread, and was given no water to drink. He died of thirst and starvation, but refused to yield to the Sikhs. Later, when the British tried to occupy Hazara district, our people resisted them too. The head of the family and his associates were arrested and taken to the Allahabad fort. I saw their graves in 1926. The head of the family, I was told, was blown off the mouth of a gun while the others were subjected to great torture. My father had a large family, and the income from his army pension and Thailand was limited. But he was determined that I should get a proper education. More than that, he was anxious for me to have a grounding in Islam and Muslim thought. He wanted me to become a Hafiz-e-Quran. The village Maulvi was chosen for this purpose. There was great excitement in the house the first day I was sent to the mosque to learn the Quran. I was then 4 years 4 months and 4 days old. Sweets were distributed, and I was placed under the charge of the Maulvi. The experiment was not much of a success. Whatever part of the Quran I was able to memorize during the 2 or 3 months I spent with the Maulvi was based on an incorrect pronunciation. The Maulvi did not like me very much because I wanted to know the meaning of what I was being taught. On one such occasion he slapped me, and I slapped him back. My response was not in the best of taste, and it brought our brief association to an abrupt end. I was then sent off to another village called Koka, about 2 miles away. In Koka there was another Maulvi Sahib, a revered old man, who inspired in me great respect, and also great fear. I studied under him for a while and managed to learn as much of the Quran as a child of my age could do. By then my father had decided that whatever else I might make I was unlikely to become a Hafiz-e-Quran. The family decided that it was time for me to go to a regular school. I was admitted to a school in Sarai Saleh, which was 4 miles from our house. It was a tough routine to be woken up day after day, and to be placed on the back of a mule early in the morning. My mother used to put my primer and other school books, along with what she called my ration, in a bag. It was a beautiful winding road, but the pranks of the mule gave me little opportunity to appreciate the vast stretching fields and the soft clouds nestling in the hills. I would get back home by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, hungry and tired. Fortunately, my grandmother persuaded my father to move me to a school in Haripur, and let me live with her in Darvesh, which was close to the school. I was not a very bright student, nor did I find studies a particularly absorbing occupation. I loved outdoor life. A relative of mine kept hawks and dogs, and that was excuse enough for me to slip away from school to look after his hawks. The result was that I failed in my tests in the 6th class when I was 11 years old. My father discovered what had been going on and gave me a sound thrashing, after which it became easier to attend to my studies. I managed to complete my schooling with a good 2nd division, and without much effort. I was not too good at mathematics or geometry. Algebra was the thing I understood better. And I enjoyed geography, English, Persian, and Urdu. There was no provision for games at the school, but I found enough diversion in kabaddi, gulli danda, and marbles. Later I learnt to play hockey. Riding, however, was in my blood, and the early morning mule rides provided all the training that I required. In those days the army would buy young horses from zemindars, and my father kept a string of them. One day when I was 8 or 9 years old I took a polo pony, without my father's permission, and rode it to a nearby village to see my sister. That part of the world is rather rugged along the foothills. As I was coming back downhill, all of a sudden a bird fluttered out of a bush. The horse took fright and reared. As I fell off, my left foot was caught in the stirrup, and I was dragged for quite a distance through thorny bushes. Luckily the clip in the stirrup straightened, the stirrup came out, and my foot was freed. I lay on the ground unconscious for several hours. When the horse got home, riderless and with a stirrup missing, a search was organized and I was recovered from the bushes still unconscious. Had I been dragged for a few more minutes, I would have been killed. My bones were intact, but my back was badly bruised, and for the next 6 months I had to sleep on my chest. On the whole I found school life quite enjoyable. The school was run by the Sikhs, and the teachers were very kindly and considerate, except for Master Sujan Singh, who was a Tartar. He did not need much excuse or provocation to beat up the whole class, including the monitor, a position to which I was often elevated. Whenever anything went wrong, it was the monitor who was the first to be punished for it. I remember a cold rainy day when Master Sujan Singh did not turn up. We hoped to God he was dead, I was deputed by the class to go and find out what had happened. I found the master surveying the debris of his house, which had collapsed under the rain, looking as alive as ever but a trifle disconcerted. I conveyed to him the concern of the class, and suggested that we should all come and help him rebuild the house. He brusquely turned down the offer, and asked me to go back to school, which I did, anxious to communicate the good news to my companions without loss of time. He could not attend the school for a fortnight, and we found that a great relief. The Sikhs were large-hearted people. I found their rituals and their songs in Punjabi absorbing. I still remember a line which fascinated me at that time. Life is a great spectacle of colours. One sees so much of it and yet one has an insatiable desire for more. I learnt something very important at school. It was that I should never judge a man by his locality, colour, or vintage. All my life I have been unconscious of these considerations. It has been an article of faith with me that a man should be judged on merit. On one occasion, much later, I had to tell one of my own brothers, who was a major in the army, and had committed a serious irregularity, that he must either resign or face a court-martial. He resigned. While I was still at school, my father would ask me, "Would you like to go to Aligarh?" I hardly knew what Aligarh meant or where it was. He explained to me that it was a famous Muslim college, in the United Provinces, beyond Delhi. It was an Islamic institution, and it had been established by the Muslims at great cost. He wanted me to go to Aligarh, so that I could learn to feel like a Muslim. As soon as he heard that I had passed my matriculation examination, in 1922, he told me to go to Aligarh. He was in such a hurry, that he sent me a month before the university opened. When I arrived in Aligarh with a servant, I found a group of 4 empty hostels, called Minto's Circle, set in a very isolated area. It was almost a jungle, and for company, apart from some chowkidars watchmen, we had only jackals, pie dogs and wild animals. We inquired of a chowkidar, where we could get a couple of charpoys beds. The chowkidar opened one of the rooms, and we found a lot of charpoys, none of which had any advans. The string which holds the woven bed taut to the frame. The chowkidar explained that when the boys leave, they take out the advans to tie up their luggage. So we had to sleep on those charpoys, with our legs hanging down. We lived there virtually alone, and we had to travel quite a distance every day to get food. My servant suggested that we return home, as the university was not due to open for another month. I would have liked to do that, but I did not have the courage to face the old man, and convince him that I had not run away from Aligarh. "No, sir, I cannot go back." So I stayed on till the university opened, and, as time passed, I began to develop a great affection for the people and the institution. Aligarh was unique in many respects. I found there boys from all parts of India, Iran, and the African countries. They were drawn from widely differing social backgrounds, and they spoke different dialects and languages, but they all had to learn to adjust themselves to the atmosphere of Aligarh. Some of them found life too hard and exacting, and ran away. But for those who stayed, there was a great feeling of equality, brotherhood and camaraderie. And there were some who never wanted to leave the place, like Aslam Sahib, who was in the 10th class, and had a son in the 9th. He sat for his examination regularly, and when I saw him, he had already failed 9 times. He would say, "I am the only one here who takes his examinations without any personal motive." The place had a charm of its own. I suffered from one handicap. My pronunciation and accent in Urdu were a little odd, and I would mix my genders. At home, I used to speak Hindko, which is a variation of Punjabi. Some of the students were amused, but I could never understand the cause of their amusement. I would feel quite unhappy at times, but gradually I improved my Urdu pronunciation, and they got accustomed to it. Discipline and behavior in Aligarh was largely the concern of the students themselves. There was little real contact between the teachers and the younger students. The masters were kind and helpful, but they concentrated on teaching. The routine duties, including the arrangements for food, as well as dress and behavior, were the responsibility of the senior students, and they were hard taskmasters and very severe on anyone who did not maintain the standards and traditions of Aligarh. Inevitably, there was a considerable amount of ragging. The popular mode was dovetailing, which meant that in the middle of the night your bed was overturned, and you were plastered with muck. I knew my turn would come, and I was dreading it. I am a light sleeper. One night I heard some slight noise and woke up to find 4 or 5 fellows armed with buckets standing close to my bed. I made a lunge at one of them and hit him as hard as I could. I kicked the next one. They had not bargained for this, so they pacified me by declaring that I was one of them, and there was no need to create trouble. I don't know how much I learnt in the way of academic studies, but I did learn how to live with people of differing origins and backgrounds, and how to understand their points of view. Aligarh has always remained a place of pilgrimage for me. Later in life I was able to help the university when I was aide-de-camp to the British resident in Hyderabad, Deccan, in 1931. Sir Ross Massoud was the Vice-Chancellor of Aligarh at that time, and he came to Hyderabad to get a donation for the university from the Nizam. The Nizam was so much under British influence that he did not dare to do anything without the resident's permission. Sir Ross came to see the resident but did not find him sympathetic. After some time he came again, and I had an opportunity to meet him. I was deeply impressed by his devotion to the cause of Aligarh. The resident was getting a little impatient with Sir Ross, so I found an occasion to put in a word for him. I told the resident, "You might think this man is making a nuisance of himself, but he is utterly dedicated to the institution. His grandfather established it, and his father spent his life there. The Nizam will only waste his money. Why not let him do something for a good cause?" In the end, the resident agreed, and Sir Ross Massoud got his donation from the Nizam. In the process he became quite friendly with me. I would go and see him quite often, and though he was a much older man, he treated me with great consideration. I wrote to him once that there was excellent soldier material among the Muslims, and the university should encourage them to join the training corps. Indeed, I urged him to make the university responsible for training suitable young men for the army. Toward the end of my stay at Aligarh, a commission led by General Skeen, who was Adjutant General of the Army, visited the university with 2 or 3 Indian officers. They were looking for suitable officer material for the army. There was considerable complaint in the country at that time, that Indians were not getting fair representation among officers in the army. General Skeen and his advisers held a general durbar in Strachey Hall. This was early in 1926 and I was a member of the University Training Corps. General Skeen asked me, "Would you like to go into the army?" I said, "Of course I would like to go into the army." He asked me why, and when I explained my family background and my father's service record, he advised me to submit my application. Later, I was interviewed by the Deputy Commissioner, and then by the Governor of the province. The final examination and interviews took place at Simla, which used to be the general headquarters of the army in summer. Major Dane, who was principal of the intermediate college at Aligarh, coached me for the Sandhurst examination. This came about in a curious way. One day as I was coming out of the classroom, Major Dane accosted me in the corridor. "Are you still here?" he shouted. "Did I not tell you to leave at once?" I was taken aback. "You did not tell me to leave. Why should I? What for?" It was now his turn to feel surprised. He called 3 or 4 other students to identify me, and realized that he had made a mistake. Some other student who looked like me had been rusticated from the university. Major Dane was very upset, and wanted to find some opportunity to make amends. One day he walked up to me in the middle of the theology class. Our Mulvi had a huge paunch and a big beard, which made him look like Santa Claus. He did not teach us much. Major Dane said to him, "Maulana Sahib, will you kindly stop your lecture?" He then turned to me and said, "I want to apologize to you for that silly mistake I made the other day." So Major Dane offered to coach me for the Sandhurst examination. He gave me 2 or 3 hours of his time daily for about 3 or 4 months. Took an immense amount of interest in my work, and would come to my room or take me to his house. Eventually, in June 1926, I was informed that I had been selected to go to Sandhurst, and naturally I was excited at the prospect. I also had a sense of relief that I would not have to take my BA examination, but apart from my personal feelings and my interest in the army, I realized that there were too few Indians and fewer Muslims who held commissioned ranks. I knew that when independence came it would have to be defended, and that meant that my training at Sandhurst would be fully utilized by my country. The decision to go to Sandhurst was my own. My father would have preferred me to finish my education and then choose a civilian profession. One factor which worried him was the large expenditure involved. I would need about 25,000 rupees for the Sandhurst course. My father worked his lands well, but he had several children to educate, and it was not easy to spare such a large sum of money for me. His answer to the problem was typical. He said he would sell all his land and property so that I could fulfill my ambition. Fortunately, I did well at Sandhurst, and won several scholarships, and the sacrifice was not necessary.